Hi, and welcome to Season 3, Episode 19 of SteamLUG Cast. We're recording this on the 2nd of October 2015. My name is Cheese, and with me I have Corbin.
Hi.
Linux then?
Hello.
New host, Dora.
Hiya.
And special guest from Flippfly, Aaron San Filippo.
Glad to be here.
Greetings. So before we dive in, might have a quick recap of what we've been playing lately. Corbin, what have you been up to?
Oh, I've played a lot around with new hardware because my MacBook had an issue. It's from 2011 and it has this issue with the AMD card. So the graphic was broken and it was time for me to get a new device. And I was thinking about to get a more mobile device thing. And I ended up with a Surface Pro 3, which I played around with to get Linux on it. And it works now pretty good. It even is enough for playing some games. That took quite a while. So I could play those idle clicker games on it, like Adventure Capitalist and Time Clickers. Those games really eat much time if you run them in the background. But they make kind of fun. I don't know why. I have them running all the time. I wanted to play Alien Isolation, but as we will see later, it was not possible yet. So I played a little bit Rocket League. As we know, this will come to Linux sooner or later with the Steam hardware. I thought I had to practice a bit as I got my copy from the pre-order. It's a...
Look at you, trying to get an edge.
Yeah, I need to practice. This game is really skill-based, and if you start fresh, it's really hard to not miss the ball. You play with cars and try to... It's kind of soccer, and you play with cars to shoot the ball.
I keep hearing about that one and I really hope we get it on Linux soon because I've been hoping to try it.
It's a really fun game.
It does look pretty neat.
I also played a little bit Evolve again. We still are waiting for a Linux port. I hope this will come soon because this game is really great if you can play it with friends. I think it's the first game with not symmetric multiplayer. So it's one big monster against 4 hunters.
Yeah, I like the isometric aspects of that, you know?
Yeah, Linux and...
I was gonna ask, Evolve, is that really like coming to Linux?
It was announced on the Steam Universe page, but that's the only announcement we have seen so far.
Huh.
Yeah, and as we have it now on Linux, the Stanley Parable, which is, I don't know, it's not a real game, it's an experience, and it's so great to experience this game.
Have you experienced the demo?
Too, but afterwards. I first played the game,
Yeah.
and then I heard that the demo is quite different, and then I played the demo too.
The demo is a lot less non-linear than the game.
Yeah, they're the same style, but kind of different stories. And the funny thing is, if you play the Stanley Parable the first time and do what the narrator tells you to do, you can finish it in, I don't know, 5 minutes?
Yeah, but did you finish it?
Yeah, sure. This was the first playthrough. And then you restart for the first time. And it will not be the last time. All right. Dora, tell us what you've been playing lately.
Oh yeah. I have been burning most of my time lately on RuneScape and Mountain Blade Warband. I guess they're both just old favorites of mine, but Warband came out on Linux a while ago, as y'all know, and RuneScape, I guess, is just Java and cross-platform. So I haven't been missing it for a while. Lastly, I've been playing a lot of Road Redemption. It's the spiritual successor to Road Rash and pretty intense. But I'm taking a break from that right now because it's been upping my heart rate a bit too much for a video game.
What have you been playing, Linux, then?
On Monday this week, I had some family come over, and we played Thief Town. And if you have big picture and some controllers, this is a game that whether you're a gamer or not, you're gonna like it. Because we had a blast. I'm talking about we played maybe an hour of it, and we had just enough fun with it that we can call it a night. We played Hammer Watch after that, but nothing was as fun as Thief Town. If you don't have that game, I honestly recommend you get it. If you have family come over and you got some controllers laying around, it's a wonderful game. That's about it, really.
And Cheese, tell us what you have been playing.
I've been a little bit crook, so I haven't had much of a chance to play anything. But I did find time to sit down and play some Expand, which we're probably going to mention later, and play through the release version of Ninja Pizza Girl, which also we'll mention later. But Aaron, if you have time for games, what sort of stuff have you been playing?
Sure. I feel kind of bad lately because for whatever reason, I'm just not super motivated to play a lot of stuff. I did start playing Journey on PS4 with my 9-year-old daughter recently. Um, More recently, I've been playing this little 99-cent mobile game called Hoplite, and I think it might be a couple years old now, but it just kind of has its hooks in me. It's sort of a turn-based strategy game on a hexagon grid where you're this little soldier guy and you're just kind of like trying to avoid being killed and upgrading as you go. I don't remember where I heard about it, but it ended up on my phone, and I just been playing it in the airport and just every moment I have. So it's pretty addictive.
How are you finding Journey as a sort of a local shared experience? Are you kind of one player watching, one player controlling kind of thing?
It's kind of interesting. I sort of heard some hints about what it was about. I never played it when it was on PS3, and so I just kind of picked it up and I started playing it with my 9-year-old, and then after about 20 minutes, somebody else popped in, and I think we got to this part where something happened and we got separated, or it seems like the other person got killed or something, and it wasn't totally clear to me if that was kind of a scripted moment or what had happened, but it really affected my little girl. She was just like, "What happened to him?" And she was really sad, and she wanted to go back and try to find them and stuff. And so it was, yeah, pretty emotional experience for her, which was not something I see a lot in video games. So that was pretty great.
I think it does some really interesting stuff as a game.
I have this horrible habit of starting games and really enjoying them, and then just kind of getting distracted and moving on to something else. So I tend to start a lot more games than I finish.
I do that too.
Yeah, same here.
It's a really terrible habit. It's like I don't do it with books and movies as much, but I think I've heard other game developers say this too, where you kind of get into a rhythm where you play a game long enough to kind of figure out how it works, and you might appreciate things as like an artist would appreciate another painting or something like that. But then once you've kind of grokked, what's going on, you tend to move on, and I think that kind of describes me. So
Yeah,
there's not a whole lot of games that I actually finish.
I think that's a great way to put it. I feel the same way.
I'm trying to remember the last. No, I finished Half-Life 2, and I could probably count the games I've finished on one hand. I like to play with my kids a lot on the TV. But yeah, I've got something like 150 games in my Steam library, and I think I've played maybe 30 of them, and I've probably only finished maybe 4 or 5.
Pile of shame.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah, I got one of those too.
So to open up the main part of the show, we're gonna have a quick chat with Aaron here about the sorts of things that he does and his experiences with supporting Linux with their game Race the Sun. To start off with, do you want to give us the elevator pitch for Race the Sun? What is the game all about?
Sure. So the basic concept, I guess you could describe Race the Sun as an endless racer, but the concept is that you're a solar power craft and you're flying into the sunset. And so when the sun goes down, it's game over. And so the whole game is just about avoiding shadows and not crashing into things. And then if you catch these speed boosts, it reverses the sun. So you can imagine you're on like a very small planet or something, and you can go fast enough to essentially reverse the sunset. Doesn't actually make a whole lot of sense, but it kind of works. So that's the game in a nutshell. We added a whole bunch of leveling and some interesting things like a portal that you could fly into, and it takes you to a random world every day. But the core of the game is just that fly left and right, jump when you get a jump power up, and just make it as far as you can.
And don't forget the boost.
Don't forget to boost, right? You can last for a while without the boost, but eventually the sun will go down and you'll run out of sunlight and it'll just kind of sputter out.
How was it getting the game crowdfunded and putting it on the early access?
Sure. So what happened is we had the game on Congregate first, which is a portal for web games. And the original plan with the game was to spend about 3 months on it, and then we were going to get it on Congregate, and then hopefully we'd be able to build a community there, and then turn it into something bigger. We thought we'd get it on Steam, and well, it took a lot longer than we thought it would, and we kind of started running out of money after about 4 or 5 months. And Congregate was pretty successful at first, but things kind of sputtered out and people started losing interest. And we kind of launched a Kickstarter out of desperation, and it didn't go well at first. We kind of flatlined after the first week. So our goal was $20,000, and that was going to buy us a couple more months of development time. And after the first week, we only had about $1,000 pledged, and so we were kind of freaked out at that point, and we ended up actually kind of going back to the drawing board with the game. The original concept was kind of just random scattering of these buildings and rocks and stuff like that, and it was fun, but it didn't look very interesting, and so we kind of had this, I guess, aha moment where it seems like we came to grips with the fact that people weren't really getting into the game's concept and visuals and just the world that was in there. And so we went back to the drawing board right in the middle of the Kickstarter and basically reinvented how we were creating the world. And so I designed this level editor that would let you design objects out of primitive shapes like spheres and logs and cubes and stuff like that. And so instead of using a 3D modeling tool to create rocks and houses and different obstacles, they were all built right in the game engine with this in-game editor. And it was kind of a simplified look, but that was more or less the genesis of what you see in the game now. And so we crunched in the middle of our Kickstarter and threw out all the world content that we had, and came out with a new trailer with a week left, and people really seemed to latch onto that. And so I like to say that the Kickstarter failing at the beginning really saved the game, because it probably wouldn't have done very well if we had pushed forward with that original plan. So in the end, we actually did end up meeting our goal, $20,000 plus a little bit. It was a really good thing, just going through that experience of putting it in front of people and gathering feedback and just kind of finding the soul of the game.
It's really interesting looking at the data on KickTrack to see the kind of curve that the game had. Like that's really unusual to be able to turn things around mid-campaign like that.
Yeah, it's like a hockey stick graph. And to be honest, we didn't expect to be funded after that first week, because it just seems like typically a Kickstarter has a big burst at the beginning, and then it's more or less flat with a slow climb in the middle, and then kind of a curve upwards at the end as the excitement grows towards the final thing. But we just kind of flatlined right at the beginning and flatlined all the way until the third week. But we, at the same time,
that must have been quite an emotional journey.
Oh yeah, it was easily the most stressful time in my life. It was just, after the first week, nobody was backing it, and we were practically out of money. I think we had like maybe a month or two of money after that point. We quit our jobs. I quit my job at Raven at a studio with benefits and all that stuff to do this. And so it was kind of a very tense time for our family. At the same time, it's like once we kind of had that aha moment and figured out what we were doing with the game, we were almost more excited about the game than we were worried about the Kickstarter, just because we knew that we had found something that people were going to like. And when we finally came out with the new gameplay footage with a week left, it was just kind of like, Hail Mary, let's just try it. And so those last few days were just kind of nuts. We were recording videos of objects that Forrest was making, and posting them, and going on Twitter and asking for requests. People wanted us to make something in the world editor just to demonstrate what it could do and stuff. I think Forrest was up until 3 a.m. or something like that on the morning of the final day, just making objects and promoting it on Twitter and stuff like that. I remember waking up at like an hour before the Kickstarter ended, and my wife came and said, "You guys are funded." So it was pretty intense.
Do you feel like involving people via Twitter and taking suggestions like that gave you a lot of community engagement that helped spread the word?
Absolutely, yeah. I think we ended up with around 1,100 backers, and it seems like those were, some of our most dedicated fans. And I think that's a big part of what has helped the game succeed over time, just because it seems like people know that we care, about what we're creating, and we're not just in this for the money, and we're really trying to give this everything we've got to make something special. And I think that we really kind of sent that message when we did this Kickstarter.
So did using Congregate make it an easy decision to use Unity, or was it like the other way around? Basically, why is the game in Unity in particular, and did that make it easier to get the game out on other platforms?
Sure, yeah. So I had used a variety of game engines. I got started with games in the Unreal Engine, so I did some modding for Unreal Tournament and stuff like that. And then I used Unreal Engine 3 when I was at Raven for at least one of our games there. And so I was kind of familiar with those. Our first product as a company at Flippfly actually used an engine called the Shiva engine. It was kind of this obscure little game engine that was cheaper than Unity at the time, but we kind of regretted just going with the cheaper option because it didn't have the community and stuff like that. So I had been tinkering with Unity for a while, and I was just really impressed with all the platforms it had, and the size of the community, and the ease at which we could get support and get our questions answered. And I really liked the programming workflow. It's an engine that's really kind of centered around programmers, I guess, rather than just making things super easy like in visual, like some other engines such as Game Maker and stuff like that. And so, I guess we knew that as a two-man company, we really needed the support of some kind of engine because, I didn't want to spend 5 years on a project just trying to write renderers and stuff like that. And so, Unity was just the right choice for us, I guess, the right combination of ease of use and power and platforms. But it's definitely helped us support a lot of platforms. I can definitely say that Linux support almost certainly wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the support of Unity with that.
You mentioned that you previously worked for Raven. Do you want to give us a bit more information about your background as a developer?
Sure. So I started at Raven right out of college, actually. So I got a degree in computer science, and they hired me. They're in Middleton, Wisconsin, and I went to school in Madison, so it's right next to it. And I worked there for about 7 years as a programmer, and they have an interesting kind of division there between game programmers and tech programmers. So I was a game programmer, which meant that I was programming, but I was also kind of doing like game design light, and so I would be involved with things like um, designing weapons and kind of implementing those and defining character moves. I made some tools for other designers and animators to make it easier to implement character fight moves for some of our action games and stuff like that. And then I worked on X-Men Legends 2, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie game, Singularity, and then Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. And after we finished up Modern Warfare 3, we started on the follow-up, which was Call of Duty Ghosts. And that's when I decided to move on. I just decided that working on a huge Call of Duty game wasn't really what I got into game programming for. So
it's quite a jump from Call of Duty to Race the Sun.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was really why I did it. It was when I started at Raven, we were working on X-Men Legends 2, and it was a team of maybe 30 or 40 people, and I had a pretty big part of the programming team, and I felt like I was doing creative work every day, and able to lead people and work with people on a personal level. By the time we got to Call of Duty, it was more like we were one company among 3 companies that were making that game, and so we were spending a lot of time communicating with people in California and just the political stuff that happens between different companies working on a product and fighting for who's gonna get the top spot. Are we gonna be mentioned in the credits or publicly and stuff like that? And it was just kind of a weird situation where I was like a very small cog in a very big machine, and as much as I like playing some Call of Duty games, it just wasn't that fulfilling to work on as a programmer. I wanted to be doing interesting things and challenging things and growing, and it was more or less just like scripting moments in Call of Duty missions. So, if any of you played Modern Warfare 3, there's a section where you're in a Jeep and you're kind of like driving along the beach and shooting guys from the back of the Jeep, and then you smash through a gate and jump out of the gate, and it's like the cinematic moment that lasts about 15 seconds. I probably spent about 2 or 3 months of my life, at Raven just working on that one sequence. It's like getting the tire tracks in the sand to just look just right, and getting this guy to run to the right spot, and all these little things that are kind of interesting, but it wasn't really challenging in terms of programming. Whereas at Flippfly, I'm pretty much our only programmer. We work with some contractors and stuff, but it's pretty much all on me, and I'm also doing some game design and some art stuff and business things, and just wearing a whole lot of different hats on any given day.
Right, so I take it it's a lot different, just running your own company with your brother.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's a new challenge every day. It's hard to know what I'm going to be doing a week from now.
Right. Was it hard to get started as your own company?
There's definitely some unexpected things. We didn't know anything about marketing and PR and stuff like that. My brother Forrest came from a graphic design background, and he actually owned a small sign shop. And so he had some ideas about, how to run a company and how you get it started and how to file the paperwork as an LLC and, how we're going to do financial reporting and pay taxes and stuff like that. So that helps a little bit. But there's definitely a lot of things that are totally new territory for us all the time. Everything from how do we negotiate a contract with some platform to get our game on their system, or how do we get the press to cover our game or care about our game, or how do we handle tech support, and on Steam when we do a free day on Steam and suddenly we've got like 100,000 new players and hundreds of emails coming in. How do we deal with that as a two-person company and stuff? So a lot of it is just being agile and kind of responding to things as they come in, and then learn a little bit about how we want to do it differently and make adjustments, and then go from there. But yeah, it's definitely pretty uniquely challenging, I guess.
Right. So between all of that, between the Kickstarter and developing Race of the Sun and starting Flippfly, what would you say the biggest issues were that you had to overcome to get where you are?
With Flippfly, so I guess it's hard to say there's one biggest issue. I think if I could look back at the 2 past years, I think the biggest challenges have come getting the game onto consoles has been a real challenge for us, and part of that is because of the technical challenges and meeting all the requirements for Sony and the Wii U and Xbox One and stuff like that, and just
Isn't certification fun?
the certification, yeah, and just as a two-person company, it's hard because we're doing the development and we're doing the paperwork and the legal stuff, and then the actual submission and the QA for that, and then when we get some kind of a failure report from Sony that says you need to fix this thing, then it's on me to do that. And it's just I've gotten used to wearing a lot of hats, but the constant context switching, I guess, can be really mentally taxing. And I guess the tough thing is that we spent about a year on Race of the Sun, and now we've been working on porting it and improving it and supporting it and stuff for 2 years now, and it can just be kind of draining after a while.
What do you think have been the most sort of pleasant surprises that you've found along the way?
I think the support of the community at large has been really pleasantly surprising. We've just so many people have done this, and it's making games as an independent developer it's really challenging, and most people fail at it, which is hard. But I think that after the Kickstarter happened and people saw like, yeah, these guys are really giving it everything they've got, it's just kind of like we had this group of people that rally around us, and that's just been amazing. Just random developers from somewhere in the world are supporting us and sending us kudos, or looking to us for advice, which is really weird. I had somebody send me a gift card for Starbucks a few months back because I had sent him some code for PlayStation, and he thought it saved him a bunch of time, so he just like sent this thank you card with a gift card. So that was just kind of cool.
Nice.
And that made me really enjoy going to GDC and PAX and stuff like that, just so we can connect with people. I will also say, just in terms of Linux users, I think I was really pleasantly surprised by the detail and patience from the Linux community, especially in terms of support for their systems, or getting a controller working or something like that. Like far and away, the Linux community tends to send the most detailed bug reports. We don't have to ask for a log file; it's already included. Or we don't need to ask the details of what the systems are. And I guess that just goes with the territory to a degree. But that's made it really, really fun to support Linux.
It's always really positive to hear that the developers have had experiences like that where they feel that that someone has their back.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of customer support, it's always frustrating when somebody's just like angry and impatient, and it's like somebody got the game for free on Steam and they're telling us how crappy our support is because we don't reply to their ticket in the first 24 hours or something like that. But I think when a player like plays our game and sends us a really detailed list of here's some issues I found, or here's some feedback on the gameplay, and here's how I think it would be better, it's actually really valuable to us, especially in the early stages of a game for beta testing or something like that. Just knowing like, hey, you shouldn't bind the escape key. It should just always be there because of this. It's like, oh yeah, we hadn't thought of that. That's actually a really good point. And that kind of thing has happened a lot with the game. So it's made us, really think about, starting on PC, and supporting Linux with our next game as well, just because it's so much easier to improve the game that way.
I was lucky to be one of your beta testers,
Yeah.
but despite getting bug reports and how to fix it, maybe with details, which other responses did you get from players just from playing your game?
Just a really broad spectrum of interactions with people. Everything from I think it's too hard to I want a harder mode, or I think it's awesome to the controls are. It feels like I'm flying a semi truck and it's not responsive enough. It's like just that people's opinions can be really polarizing. But and to be honest, it's like now that the game is out on all these platforms, and we essentially finished the game 2 years ago now. It's kind of like we're not quite as open to just like here's a suggestion for the ship control mechanics or something. Some of those things aren't going to change now, but it's always good to know like what people think of the game. And I think we're still trying to figure out like this is going to sound weird, but what is it exactly about the game that people are attracted to? Because it seems like it's a little bit different for everybody, and there's some things that surprised us. Like we designed the game to feel like exhilarating and tense and like a rush, and you're going super fast. But we've heard from a lot of people that they play the game to relax and just to kind of zone out and not think about anything. And that would just kind of, it seems like there's some sort of deep psychological thing that people tap into when they play the game. And it wasn't something that we planned at all. But now that we know about that, it's like, okay, what can we do to make that better for our next game? How can we tap into that? So that's been really kind of interesting.
I think that goes to show that people have diverse tastes, and even within the people that a specific individual game will appeal to, that there's still a lot of potential diversity there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel like that outside of the bug reports, that the reception of your game in the community has been a lot different between Linux users and other platforms?
I'm not sure. I think the overall perception of the game, or I guess the reception's been pretty positive across all the platforms that we've been on, and we designed the controls to work really well everywhere. I guess maybe if I could say anything, it's that Linux users are maybe a little bit easier to please, and that's I talked about the bug reports and stuff like that, but I guess, and maybe this is just my perception, but every once in a while I would send out a beta, and then a Linux user would tell me, "Oh yeah, it's great, it's fun, and this is a really great game and everything." And then I find out later that like they had to install some package to make it work, or change some setting in the drivers, or something in the menu was just totally broken that we weren't aware of. But it was just kind of, I guess I got the impression that maybe Linux users are just used to working around some of those issues, and so they didn't care. But it was kind of like, no, we actually want to know about that,
Yeah, definitely familiar with that.
But do you have a Linux system you can test yourself on too?
We do. I'm kind of ashamed to say we didn't at first. I was kind of relying on some of our early beta testers. I'd make a Linux build and send it out and just ask people to test it. Forest actually does have a Ubuntu system now. Ubuntu, probably pronouncing that wrong, but so we do actually test on Linux now before we put builds out for the most part.
Yeah, you are still improving the game. For example, as I remember, you've been to the Steam Dev Days.
We did go there, yep.
And one thing that they have all talked about was let the community build something for your game. And as I remember, one thing you changed afterwards was the Steamworks support, so people could do their own levels. How was that?
Yeah, that's right. So they were. We went to the Steam Dev Days in early 2014, and they talked about workshop support and just how much they like to promote games that have user created content. And so I was lucky enough to find our Valve contact and talk to him in person, and I really wanted to talk through stuff with him. And we were planning to do a contest for workshop levels, and I talked to him about whether they would like to promote that or whether they thought that was a good idea. And so that was reassuring to be able to talk to them about it. And so we launched workshop support in that, I guess it was January or February of 2014, and we did a sale at the time, and I'm pretty sure that Valve featured the game as like workshop support added and stuff, and we did a big contest, and so that was pretty awesome. We had really cool levels that the community created and stuff like that. And yeah, we're always trying to support the game and make it better. We're trying to balance that with porting and working on new games and stuff like that, but there's always something that kind of draws us back in, and just miscellaneous issues that need to be fixed and stuff like that. So it's always a bit of an ongoing process. At the moment on my list to do for the game is Steam controller support. So the new Steam machines that are coming out, we have a controller from Valve, and we just need to set up the bindings and stuff like that. I've had a beta with Oculus Rift support for a while. It was something that we promised during our Kickstarter. And so I've kind of been working on that between other things, but it's a slow growing process, and Oculus keeps changing, things on their end, and trying to keep up with them too. So that's on my list. And then we've got kind of like this wish list of things that we'd like to do but might not ever happen. Like our leaderboards have some issues with cheating. If you look at the leaderboards on any given day, there's always a few like bogus scores at the top, and it's actually a really hard problem to solve. But we'd like to do something where you submit a replay along with your score, and then people could verify that. And, the community could like flag things if it looked like a cheating score and stuff like that. But it's one of those things that's just kind of, I could probably spend a week and get that feature in, or I could be working on our next game, or or getting out, one of our other platforms faster and stuff like that. So those things tend to just kind of sit there on our list, staring at us for months.
Aaron, I feel like the game is a throwback, like a nod to Tron. Is there any relation?
Not to Tron. I actually, I'm gonna sound dumb saying this, but I've not actually seen that movie. Maybe I saw it when I was younger, but I think if anything inspired it more than anything else, it was probably Star Fox for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
So we used to
Barrel roll.
Yeah, it was a funny story. Like when we were kids, we were big fans of Nintendo, but we didn't actually own the systems. And so what we used to do is you used to be able to go to the video store and rent a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis, like one day at a time. And so when we had birthdays, we would go and we'd rent a Super Nintendo, and we'd get like Super Mario World and Star Fox and play it. And so we used to just play that like a few times a year when we had birthdays and stuff. And we actually like made a video recording of it once, and we'd watch it in between, and we actually could play it and stuff, and then play it. And so that game had a big impact on us, I guess, as kids. And so, when our Kickstarter was struggling and stuff like that, and we were talking about what else can we try, that thought came to me, like, what if we just went really simple with the graphics and went to that flat shaded Star Fox kind of look. So that was kind of the direction we went with it.
I think with how simple it is, that's what reminded me of Tron, the original.
Yeah, totally. I can definitely see that connection. And yeah, it's we've had people tell us the game looks a lot like there's a game called Cube Field or Cube Runner, I think it was called. One of those two. Maybe it had both of those names at some time. There's like a little flash game, and there's a few other similar games that were mostly like little web games from the 90s and stuff, but most of them we weren't aware of when we actually made the game.
So what sort of challenges has exploring VR support presented? I mean, I think a lot of people immediately, the first thing they think of is some kind of first-person perspective, but I think there are there's a lot more possibility space that a developer can explore with regards to implementation. What sort of stuff have you been playing with on that front?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I haven't really done much beyond adding support to Race's Sun. I've got my DK2 sitting here just waiting for me to do something cool with it, and it's just it seems like Race's Sun and support has taken most of our time this past year, but I'm hoping to dig into it more in the future and kind of see what you can do. As far as Race's Sun, it was definitely kind of a question we had. Do we add a first-person mode, or do we keep the camera where it is and let you look around? And we kind of got it just in there, where basically the camera is the same as it would be if you were playing without VR support, but you can look around. And
it feels like that sort of situational awareness you can have from that might feel like it's beneficial.
Yeah, it's kind of, the weird thing is like, it seems like it's a player preference thing too. And so some people might prefer just being in the view, and some people might prefer being outside of it. And a lot of people suggested, like, maybe you could tilt your head side to side and that would steer. And we haven't tried that yet, but somebody from Valve actually had a talk where it was like,
you're tired very quickly.
Yeah, you get tired, and it's kind of like this disconnect between, where your head is, the way your head is tilted, and the way you're actually set up in the game. But I think we decided not to do that. But yeah, it's just the control mechanism and kind of where do you put the camera, and also just the things like camera shake, and there's certain things you just don't want to do in VR because you'll get motion sickness really quickly. Stuff like the when you crash the ship, the camera kind of does this little pan around thing, and movements like that can be kind of jarring.
Yeah.
I think Race the Sun has been mostly a pretty easy thing, just because it's like you kind of just lock the camera to the ship and then you can look around. But I think the challenges are really going to depend on what type of game we're making.
Yeah, definitely.
And for the Steam controller, as we now play the game mostly, at least I do, with an Xbox controller, Xbox 360, how will it be different with the Steam controller?
That's a good question. We haven't totally figured that out yet. So we got a Steam controller prototype when we went to that Dev Days thing. It's changed a little bit since then. So that initial prototype, I think, didn't have the same types of buttons on it and stuff like that. I think my thought was probably to, by default, make it so it's the D-pad more or less works like a D-pad. So you just kind of touch on the left-hand side, and that's when you go that way, and you touch on the right, and that's when you go that side. The controls in the game are really pretty simple, though. When it comes down to it, it's like steer left and right, and then there's an action button. So I don't think it'll be particularly interesting as a use case for that. But I think that the controller support, the way Valve designed it, is that you can basically just expose the settings on the controller, and then people can make their own profiles. And so people should be able to control it in quite a variety of different ways if they want to.
Does the Steam controller have a gyro?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't think it has a gyroscope.
I think it might. And John says it does in chat.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'll have to look into it, but I think the bottom line is, like, as long as we can get at any input from it as if it were like a joystick axis, it shouldn't be that hard to support it. So if you can tap into that gyro and kind of map that to a -1-to-1 kind of mapping as if it were like a joystick, it shouldn't be hard to set that up as a so you could do tilt controls or something like that. But we haven't really explored it yet.
So you were talking earlier about making the graphics and artistic style for Race the Sun. But what about the music and other sounds and design in the game? Is that all done internally with Flippfly?
It is, yeah. So my brother Forrest, in addition to doing graphic design, he's a musician and a sound designer. And so kind of between the two of us, we've more or less covered everything. So all the sounds in the game and all the music is all composed and created by him.
Aaron, will there ever be a part 2? Will there ever be multiplayer support at some point?
We've thought about it. We've thought about both of those things, actually. We had actually added a sort of multiplayer system early on with Race the Sun, and maybe Corbin remembers this. It was this relay system where you would have a run, and then when you crashed, you could leave a link for somebody else to click on, and they could continue your run from where you were, and then you'd have a certain number of lives. So maybe it was like 5 lives for a team run.
Huh.
And it was interesting, and we thought it was going to be awesome, and we spent like 4 months developing it and kind of made the game go over budget again. And it turns out that it isn't that much fun, because the game is, you really kind of need to be in the zone to play, and it starts out easy and it gets harder. And so typically when you pick up the game to play, you might crash once or twice at the beginning, and then you kind of get in the zone and you're doing well. But with this relay system, it was like, if somebody did really well and they got to region 5 or something, and you hand off a link to somebody else, on the internet randomly,
They die instantly.
They die instantly, and then they feel really bad about it, because it's like, I'm gonna continue this run and we're gonna do great, and then you die, and you just kind of like feel like you ruined the whole thing for everybody, and you probably never do it again. And so what we saw was, like, people would share these links, and on average, like, the combined 5 score run was smaller than the best single player scores out there. And that was just kind of one sign that the design wasn't really working. And there were very few games that people actually finished where it was like all 5 runs had been completed, and you could pass it back and forth. You and a second person could do it. So it was just kind of, there may be some kind of live play mechanism where something like that could work, but we actually decided to remove that before the Steam version, just because the engagement with it was so low. and just supporting the whole system with servers and stuff was just kind of a lot of overhead. But we've talked about other forms of multiplayer, and we've had some suggestions from the community. People have talked about, what if you're just playing together with other people and it's like the last person alive wins, or maybe there's some kind of a cooperative mode where you're following in somebody else's path, or just a straight up race where it's like whoever can get to region 3 the fastest wins. There's kind of some interesting issues that come up with there, both technical and design wise, but we haven't really explored it in terms of making prototypes, but I could definitely see that being a possibility. In terms of a sequel, we've talked about it, and we've probably talked about it more recently than before. There's all these ideas that we have for the game that, it's like, do we add this to the existing game? It seems like, the buzz has kind of died down a certain amount, or do we save it for, a follow up? So there's probably enough ideas there for a sequel, and we've invested enough in ourselves, and kind of know where we're gonna want to go with the visuals and stuff, where we feel like we can make something that takes that minimalist 3D polygonal look and kind of take it to the next level. At the same time, it's like we're not super excited about making a sequel at the moment, just because it's we kind of want to try something different. But it could definitely happen.
So other than that, what do you think's next for Flippfly as a company? Do you have any big projects going on?
Sure. So we actually announced a game about a year ago now, kind of low key, but it's called Hexarden, and it's a hexagon-based gardening game. And so the basic premise is that it's just like a chill, relaxing gardening experience that takes place on a hexagon grid. And we announced it about a year and a half ago now, and we how do I put this? We kind of started prototyping, and we got really excited about it, and then we announced it, and we realized that there were some design flaws in the game. We've kind of just been iterating on that prototype, and we have time between other things. And so at the moment, that's just sort of a slow burn project, or we'll finish it at some point, but we're still trying to figure it out. We've also been prototyping this past summer with our friend Andrew James Adams, who's also here in Wisconsin, and we basically hired him to help us with prototypes over the summer, and we've got a few of those, and we've got kind of a plan for those that we're gonna try to push on those a little bit more, and we're kind of working on a big announcement with those. So we'll probably be doing more with those as well.
All right. And do you think that like a gardening game or other types are kind of too far removed from Race the Sun? Or basically, I'm thinking that. Do you think that the same kind of people who play and enjoy your current games out will like the other stuff you're working on?
That's a really good question, actually. And we have no idea. And part of it is that we don't really know exactly what the audience looks like that plays Race the Sun. There's a lot of games that are designed for a particular demographic or something, and we've really heard people like it of really a wide variety of ages and stuff like that, and in both genders. But it seems like we're kind of going a really different direction with Hexard, and it's probably not going to be like the same type of appeal. It's sort of the polar opposite when it comes to why you would want to play it. It's not a rush. It's not exciting. It's probably closer to something like Bejeweled or Triple Town, or maybe Threes, or something along those lines, than it is to an action game. But at the same time, we brought a prototype of it to the PAX East show and to GDC with us, and we had really good feedback on the prototype. And it seems like what people really appreciated was just the concept of it's a game about gardening. It's all about relaxing and stuff like that. So we're kind of excited to maybe push in a different direction and grow our audience. But it's also, we're a little nervous about that because we have a newsletter and, all these people who've played this game, and we don't know how many of them are going to enjoy that. So we really just don't know what we're doing when it comes to that, I guess.
It always feels like a big hurdle for a second title, because if you've only got one title out, people will assume that that's all you do. But once you start to get a second or third or fourth title out, that you get to expand and explore the things that you're interested in as a developer, and people can get a better gauge of how to manage their expectations for what sort of games you make. But when you've only got one out there, it's really hard for your audiences to know what sort of stuff you're interested in making.
Absolutely, yeah. And you do see, there are developers who do really well with just kind of picking one genre and sticking with it, and they kind of get known for that. I think I aspire to be something more like, I guess Double Fine or something where it's like you just see a really wide variety of game genres come out of there, and
Hmm.
we like to think that we could create genres too. In this gardening game, we've had a really hard time. Like it's something in between a puzzle game and real time strategy and kind of just like a toy. And so it's going to be hard to pin it down into one particular genre or something to compare it to. But we also feel like that's a position of strength, just because nobody's going to be able to say they've played this game before when we're done. So, but yeah, I know what you're saying. It's kind of like, do we target the audience that we already have and then grow it and make, keep those customers happy and tell their friends and then bring more people in, because that's a strategy that's worked really well for some companies? Or do we just kind of do what we want to do and hope that people find us?
Will your new game support Linux as well?
I can't say 100% for sure, just because it might end up that with Hexarden it could turn out that it's better as a mobile game, and in that case maybe we'll just do iOS and Android or something. But I think if we make another PC game, Linux, I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't support Linux. The Unity engine's support for Linux just keeps getting better, and we've definitely had more support issues for Linux than for other platforms, but on the whole, I think that it balances out, and I think that Linux users have been very patient and very understanding about things taking a while to figure out, or if there's some obscure issue with a package not being installed on a technically unsupported Linux distro, then it might take us longer to be able to figure something out. But the community is really good at helping each other as well, so I can't really think of any downsides.
How much of your Linux support your issues do you feel are balanced between problems that are inherently a part of the platform, problems that are related to Linux support maturing, being new for Unity, and problems that are related to your own, first experiences with supporting Linux as a studio?
Sure. It seems like, if I had to estimate, it seems like a pretty even distribution of all that. Um, as a few examples, so there was an issue where um, laptops with a certain Intel chipset, um, the the Unity engine was disabling certain OpenGL graphics features on that chipset,
Mm.
and that manifested itself in the game by the menus would just be totally black. And so there was a certain period, like in early 2014 or something, where we had upgraded the Unity engine or something, and suddenly, like, I don't know, a third of all Linux users or something were telling us like the menu's black, I can't play the game, and that was just kind of out of our control. It was like, until Unity fixes this low level issue with the graphics drivers, like there's just nothing we could do about that. And I think what happened was the plugin that we used in Unity for the UI changed the way he was doing something that didn't use that feature, and then that issue just kind of worked itself out, and we got kind of lucky there. So that was just one of those issues where it was like we're really at the mercy of this software that we're using for it, and I couldn't have really fixed it even if I wanted to. Other issues like um, you know an Xbox 360 controller will present itself differently on Linux than it will on Mac, and that's not really Linux's fault. It's just it's a different platform, and so I just need to kind of go the extra mile there and test that profile and make sure that we're recognizing it. We look for the controller name. It might not say Xbox 360 controller for Windows. It'll say something else. And so some of those challenges are just kind of a combination of us doing the work and the platform doing its own thing. And for the most part, I think other issues like, somebody's running the 32-bit version of the game and they're on a 64-bit OS and they need to install some package, and I'm just kind of not being a Linux user. I can't just say off the top of my head like, oh, you need to install this package for support. But I usually in those cases end up Googling like, such and such error message pops up in the log, and this just means that you need to install this package, and I can kind of troubleshoot just based on what other games have done. So that's probably also a combination of just like my ignorance about how Linux works and what people need to do, and just the complexities of the way the OS works, I guess.
We are always happy to help you out.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, some of those problems, once you solve them, they're things that you can stick in an FAQ, or they're things that you can easily help people with.
Yeah, that's true. The worst issues are the ones where it's just kind of, there's not something that's in the log file that's really helpful, but just something's broken. It's like the game that just doesn't launch at all, and I just get really stuck on it. And sometimes I'll spend like a couple hours just trying to investigate some issue. Um, eh, some of those issues, I guess, more than other platforms have happened with Linux, and those are just, I feel bad about that because it's like somebody bought the game and I just don't know how to help them get it running. Um, and when it comes down to it, it's like it's hard for me to justify spending 4 or 5 hours for one Linux user out of the tens of thousands of people who just bought the game or whatever, in a bundle or something. But it's usually worth going that extra mile. But sometimes it's pretty hard to help people.
And aside from issues like the one that you described earlier, do you feel like Unity itself has been improving over time from your perspective on Linux? Do you feel like some of these support problems are things that sort of will dry up on their own, or have dried up on their own, as the platform has evolved?
It's a little bit hard to say. I think so. Like that graphics issue seems to have worked itself out. Um, it's hard to say if their support is improved in the runtime. I know they just added a beta for a Linux editor, so there's probably going to be more people who are developing on Linux
Mm.
or Unity, and so I would expect that as people are developing on Linux and they're testing on Linux, a lot more of those miscellaneous issues will just tend to work themselves out. It's like the majority of people are probably on Windows right now, and so it's probably the most solid, well-supported platform. Um, I expect it'll keep improving, but of course, with the variety of distros out there, it's like you're never gonna solve all the issues.
And another question I was going to ask earlier when we were talking about crowdfunding was, how you feel that the climate, or if you feel that the climate has changed since you did your campaign. Do you think it would be possible to have the same crowdfunding experience today that you had back then? And knowing the things that you've learned along the way, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Good question. It seems like what's happening on Kickstarter is pretty similar to what we're seeing happen on Steam and just games in general. And that is, when a platform sees a certain amount of success, more people flood to it. And so I think that there's probably almost as much money in Kickstarter as there was a few years back, but it's probably being spread across more projects. I may be totally wrong on that, but overall, it seems like it's getting harder to succeed on Kickstarter. I've seen a few projects that just look pretty fantastic, but just aren't being funded, and that's kind of a little disheartening. Um, I I have a feeling that we would be able to go back to Kickstarter and we'd do pretty well, just because we have sort of a built-in audience now with Racist Sun. We've had, I don't know, we have something like 800,000 people that own it on PC now, and we've got a newsletter with about 18 to 20,000 people on it. We'll be able to promote it to those people, and just we're not starting from zero this time around. So I have a feeling that we could do a moderately ambitious Kickstarter and probably do okay with it. Um, but I think it really comes down to the pitch, in the presentation of what we're making, and if we're presenting something that people want to see. And I guess going back in time, it's like, if I could give myself advice, 2013 version of me before we launched it would be find a way to really work on the presentation of the game and the core concept before we brought it to Kickstarter, and really just get a better objective picture of how ready we are for that marketing cycle. And it's this weird sort of thing as a developer where, when you're working on something for months on end, it's hard to be objective about how good it really is. And when you surround yourself with friends and family who want to see you succeed, it's hard to get that too, because everybody's telling you how great it is and how much fun they're having and how much they think you're going to succeed and stuff like that. And it's hard to connect that with, you put it on a Kickstarter and you're asking people to give you 10 or 15 or 20 or $30, and it's like, uh, the the bar is raised once you're asking for money, I guess. But that was kind of an eye opener for us, I guess. So that would be the advice from me if I could go back, would just be, bring your A game and really really work on polishing that core concept before you bring it to Kickstarter.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up this this part of the show, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, or anything you'd like to ask us?
There's something I'd like to say.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Race the Sun. It's not in my favorites list, and it's not a go-to game. But if I'm ever in big picture, and I'm undecided as to what to play, I cannot pass that game and not play it. I have fun for a good 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. And it's a lot of fun when I play with my son. But there's something special about that game. I can't put my finger on it, but it's a lot of fun, but it's not something I go to. I mean, have you ever gotten any feedback like that? I mean, is that understandable? Am I taking crazy pills?
No, that's actually, it's a refrain that we've heard a lot with the game, and I think one of the challenges with it was that it didn't present itself as a game that you need to play. We asked $10 for it, and I think we had a lot of trouble getting people to pay that, just because it's like it's an endless racer, and I've played this before on my phone. But at the same time, it's like once you pick it up, I think there's something about that sensation of speed and just I guess the endorphin rush you get when you finish a region and you kind of get a little bit farther. Um, but mentally, it's not something where I think about like, oh, when I get home, I'm going to try to get to region 5 and race the sun. It's just like a temporary little like mental boost, I guess. So, yeah, I guess it's kind of a non-conventional appeal, which we didn't really expect. And so I guess that would be my question for you, and maybe you guys could help me and gals could help me figure this out. Like, you know, if there were a sequel to Race the Sun, what would be like the killer feature that would make you really want to get into it? What would make you want to play it more? What would make you stick with it for months or so after you started playing?
It's funny. It's probably not funny if I say the ability to get out of your ship and run around on foot, first person.
Kind of like, wasn't there a Star Fox game?
Do you get people asking for weird stuff like that?
I've never had anybody ask for getting out of the ship, but everybody says they want multiplayer. That's the kind of obvious thing. I think any game that doesn't have multiplayer, it's kind of like that's the feature that everybody thinks they want. And maybe it'd be awesome, or maybe it wouldn't, but yeah, it's kind of a given, I think.
I kind of agree there, though. I feel like I would totally get this and be playing it all the time if it were something I could have as like an actual party game.
Sure, that makes sense.
Without having my friends just sitting and watching.
Yeah, one thing I can tell about the game is I've been to a LAN party, or bring your own computer, how you want to call it, and there I played Race the Sun, of course on Linux. Yeah, there were a lot of people just watching the game. For example, my sister, she watched it, and after the LAN party, she bought it because it looked like fun. I think more people bought it by seeing it.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
It does feel like a game that could benefit from a kind of, everybody sits down on the couch, one person has a run, next person tries to beat that, next person tries to beat that.
Sure, so more like some kind of a party mode that's designed for local play, where you're not necessarily playing simultaneously, but it's more of just like we're going to have a little tournament or something along those lines.
Yeah, basically, that's what I would go for.
That makes good sense, yeah.
The other feature of it that pulls me in, that makes me want to spend more than like 20 minutes on this kind of thing in a row, is basically the whole leveling up, unlocking new aspects of gameplay, being able to improve my ship. Just like leveling up in RPG elements, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Personally, what would make me play that game a lot more than a 15-20 minute stretch every other, let's say, week would be if I had friends that invited me to the game. If you could somehow, some way implement multiplayer, whether it was versus or cooperative, I love either. I think that game, I'd probably pick it up just a bit more.
Sure, I can see that.
From a multiplayer perspective, had you ever explored the idea of having one player playing the game that we know as Race the Sun, and another player, sort of building the environments ahead of them?
Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, like Tron. That's what
So they become like a dungeon master, I guess, in that kind of tabletop thing where they're designing the environment for the player to explore.
Sure, yeah, it could be. I guess that opens up the question of what happens if they stop designing things. So you'd have to solve some issues like that. I did have this crazy idea for a while where there would be some kind of a spectator mode,
Mm.
and basically the spectators would be able to affect the world somehow. So maybe it's kind of like a Twitch plays type situation where people are voting on stuff. But yeah, we've not really nailed down exactly what we do with that. So.
Or maybe another player could drop the power-ups and things, and then the two players could switch roles, and that way the game plays as it normally does if they're not, if one player's not really participating, and you still have the normal type of gameplay.
Right. Yeah,
They
multiplayer.
have the opportunity to benefit each other or provide each other with benefit.
Right.
I don't know. It's like there's lots of different directions you could explore. I don't know which ones would work and which ones wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah,
I
and it's
say-
part of the hard thing is like we like the relay multiplayer idea that we had where we thought it was going to be awesome, and then we spent like 3 or 4 months getting it working, and it was like you can't really see those issues until you're worked out. And I think that multiplayer design is just sort of inherently more expensive, and that makes it a little more risky for us. And so that's the ultimate challenge for us, I guess.
Ooh, I got it. Why can't you just drop a player 5,000 feet from the sky so they can navigate their way down in the middle of something that's really, really busy, where they can't just start off at 1,000 miles an hour in front of a wall? Does that make sense?
I think I know what you're saying. So you're starting out slower, is what you're saying, and then you're
Well, instead of starting at the ground, where you could, if you want to start in the middle of a race, you can't just start at the ground because there could be a wall just, 10 feet ahead of you. So why don't you just drop them in at about like 1,000, 5,000 feet and let them navigate their way down to safe territory and get back in the race?
I see what you're saying. Yep. Yeah, there's so many variations on this. It's crazy. If we ever do make a sequel, I'm sure that would be exploring, tons of ideas with multiplayer and stuff. It's just it seems like there's too many ways to do that, to pass up.
Yeah, you can't make everybody happy.
Right.
Even for single player, there's something that Linuxen mentioned earlier about inviting people to play. That feels like it might be something that could encourage me to play, is if somebody beat my score or whatever, and then had the ability to use, say, the Steamworks multiplayer API to send me a request to play a single player game and to beat their score.
Right. iOS actually has a feature like that called challenges in Game Center. And so you can, when you get a high score, you can go to the leaderboard and then you can hit challenge, I think, and then it'll let you invite a group of your friends, and then they have like 24 hours to beat your score or something like that. And it seems like it works pretty well. We've talked about ideas like ghosts, where you get a run and maybe it records a ghost, and then you can send that to your friends and challenge them to like either beat your ghost, or maybe they have to follow in the same path as the ghost. And so imagine that there's like a string connecting you and this ghost, and then you have to like follow the same path or it'll break the string and you cross over something. Different ideas like that, where it's not necessarily live multiplayer, but it has that social connection.
Yeah, I think ghost replays and stuff would certainly be a lot of fun to explore.
Yeah, I think like I said before, we'd love to take the time to do that. Sometimes I wish we had a second programmer here where I could just kind of like have them experimenting with those things, 24 hours a day.
Cheese will do it.
I got my own games to make.
That's the dilemma, right?
I know, right? It's like, that's the thing. It's just there's so many things that you can spend your time on. It's always a challenge to choose which ones.
Right.
All right, one last question.
Sure.
Exactly how much money? No, forget it.
Well played.
It's all good. It's all good. Aaron, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is a blast. Really appreciate being able to talk to y'all.
Thank you so much for joining us.
It was an honor.
Yeah, thanks so much for being with us today.
You gonna stick around?
Unfortunately, I think I've got to get going. My wife needs me to help with some errands here, but I'll definitely listen into the rest of the podcast. These topics sounded really interesting. So, all
Awesome.
All right, go mow that lawn, Aaron. We'll miss you.
right, take care, everybody.
Well, thank you again. Alrighty, diving into recent community stuff. Looking at past events, we had Dying Light, Torchlight 2, Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and the Portal 2 Mapping Challenge. Our second one happened. Did any of you people, lovely people, manage to make any of those events?
I've been together with Hero and Ober, I think, at the Dying Light event, which not really happened, as we had 2 different or 3 different levels, and you should have almost the same level. I haven't played the multiplayer at all, and the single player not much, so I had only a level 2 character, but Hero and Bober already had a level 7, I guess. So we were discussing what to do. Bober didn't want to restart. Hero said he would maybe restart. There was a suggestion I could do a speedrun to get to level 7, but then I would miss a lot of the story. So we didn't play it, really, and we're just discussing a little bit.
Corbin, are you gonna make a map again?
You sure?
Because the last map you made,
Yeah, I'm totally gonna make a map.
you gonna make one too, Cheese?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Last year, Corbin's map. I loved it.
Thanks.
It was a great map. You know, the exit was right there in front of your face, and I just couldn't figure it out. I felt like a dummy.
Yeah, but we also had the Torchlight 2 event, where I also attended, at least for the first part of it. But as my girlfriend is working at the Oktoberfest at the moment, but not collecting money for beer, but in the checkout of a fun ride. So I have to do the babysitting, and yeah, I couldn't attend for long at the Torchlight 2 event. But it was fun.
It's all good. No, I noticed that John streamed some of the Binding of Isaac Rebirth event, if anybody's interested in checking that out.
I'll have to watch it a bit later.
Yeah, it should be cool. So that for anybody who's interested in making some Portal 2 maps, I think the mapping challenge is meant to be open for 2 weeks, so there's another week left on that at the time of recording now, and then we'll try and do some judging afterward.
Is it single player or multiplayer maps this time?
I don't know. I think anything's okay.
All right.
And we'll kind of judge them separately. I mean, we had both single player and multiplayer maps last time.
Hey, last year, it was a joke upon a joke, but somebody submitted the very default map. Like, I'm talking about, they said, yeah, let's create a map, and then they just pushed publish. Who was that?
I can't remember who that was. I don't remember.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
I think they might have since removed it.
Really?
But yeah, it was amusing.
That was great.
It was a proper entry for the challenge.
I felt like, yeah, I can solve this one. Yeah, I think it was Reg.
Oh yeah, I think it was Reg. Yeah, he's a character. On the horizon after the show, we can play some Pulsar Lost Colony. Also this weekend, Robot Roller Derby Disco Dodgeball. Coming up, Skullgirls and Assault Android Cactus. Our second event. We're gonna get together and play the daily drive and see who can get the best score. We have a request in chat for somebody to describe Pulsar. Pulsar is sort of like FTL and Guns of Icarus kind of mixed together, I guess. You have a spaceship, and you get to traverse throughout this 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 map of planets and systems and stuff. And each player plays first person on board the spaceship and has different roles as a captain and a science person and a navigator and all this sort of stuff. It's fun.
Oh my god, I need to play this.
It's pretty cool. It's still in development, it's in early access. I think I backed it on Kickstarter. There are a few of us who try to play whenever there's an update, and the game has gone into out of alpha and into beta phase, whatever that is these days. I haven't played it since it did that, but it's been coming along nicely and it's kind of fun.
So I guess I'm getting Pulsar.
I don't know if we have anything lined up, but I might see if we can get the Assault Android Cactus developers to drop in and chat with us in Mumble while we play the daily drive for that event. So I'll see if I can wrangle that.
Awesome.
Moving on to tech news, Dan Ginsberg from Valve had a bit of a talk at SIGGRAPH about Vulkan, for anybody who's interested.
Yeah, the talk is only 3 minutes, but he's stating that there's no need for developers to use a DirectX 12 rendering path or even Metal, because it would only support a single vendor or even a single platform, as Vulkan will be available for all important platforms. That's just all he said.
And also, in the Valve people talking at crowds of people realm, Chet Falzek from Valve gave a talk about VR recently. I can't remember where it was at, but the video is a nice recap of some of the concepts and technologies behind VR that developers interested in supporting it might be interested in having awareness of. EGX, that sounds about right.
So let's talk about general gaming news.
Take it away.
Alien Isolation.
Jesus Christ.
My favorite game. I've been at Gamescom 2014 and asked them at their booth if there will be a Linux version, and they said I should have a look at their community page or at the FAQ if anything will be announced. But they didn't for a long time, and now Feral announced that Alien Isolation should be released on the 29th of September, but they have some issues to figure out which affect both platforms they are porting it, so macOS and Linux, and it will be delayed a little bit. They didn't announce a new release date so far, but they will as far as they know more.
Well, that's ominous.
You know, a lot of people don't like delays, but I can't see them as anything but positive.
Yeah, because you have more time to prepare for the fear you will encounter in the game.
You know, I honestly think they should have a special collector's edition where they give you one diaper. Something you could wash, you know what I mean? Like, not like one of those disposables, you throw them away, but like one of those you could like strap on and just like wash it up, you know? Seriously, as a great way to promote that game, because that's exactly how I feel, man. I play that game for a little while. It terrifies me, and I just got to get off. I just got to stop playing. In fact, I stopped playing somewhere early in the game, and I thought I got away from it. You know, I dual booted back into Linux. I'm in Linux. The game's not here, and now all of a sudden it's coming to Linux.
That's very cool. I
I'm gonna have to switch.
Yeah, I've only played the main campaign and none of the DLCs yet, but I will do as far as it is available on Linux.
I'm still a bit worried about delays. I'm really excited if they mean that we get a higher quality game in the end, but then there was like Gauntlet, where the delays became more delays, which became not coming out at all.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen.
I think we're pretty safe in that regard. I mean, for something to fall through to the extent that Feral it's Feral, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the extent that Feral would have to can it.
Yeah, well, I trust Feral.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty unlikely.
Looks like we've also got a new add-on/expansion for City Skyline coming out After Dark. Looks pretty fun. I haven't got the base game, but I hear it's working pretty well on Linux for us.
Nice. I haven't had a chance to play it myself. It's something I've been interested in for a while, and there are a few people I know who do play it. So yeah, it's gonna be good to see how that shows up and how it's appreciated.
And the modder says in chat that they added the daylight cycle to Skylines even without the expansion. I really like it when devs do that kind of thing. I think that Paradox are like super great, and I love how they do that with Crusader Kings and so on too.
Yeah, they do a good job of making sure that their existing customers who don't pick up the DLC still feel looked after.
Like feature parity for previous buyers, basically.
Something that we just added on to the run sheet now is that I completely forgot to pop in there before is that Soma has been released. For anybody who's not aware, Soma is a sci-fi survival horror game from the people who made Amnesia. And John in chat, I think, recommended that as something that people can use to scare themselves while they're waiting for Alien Isolation.
Ooh, that's no good.
I never really got into the Amnesia games. I owned them all, but I never got into them.
I tried a few of the.
I can't play scary games. Yeah. I think I walked out of the very first room that you start in Amnesia. I walked out into the corridor, heard the sound of a door slamming, and turned it off. Like, yep, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
I've tried a few of the Amnesia games, but I just can't play them for more than like 30 seconds without someone else in the room. But I have the same problem with everything from like Resident Evil onward.
And also mentioned in chat, Summer has been ported by one of our previous cast guests, Aaron Melcher. So congratulations and thanks to him for his efforts there. Series Sam 4 has been announced and will have the same writer as the Talos Principle.
Looks like there's also a new Humble Indie bundle out with plenty of games for Linux.
Yeah.
Skullgirls.
I was actually surprised to see the lineup of titles here. I didn't expect to see that many new Linux games, I guess, or at least that many new Linux games that I didn't personally have. Are there any amongst the titles there? Are there any games that you guys are particularly interested in?
I bought it because of Xenonauts. I'm a fan of the original UFO games, UFO Unknown and XCOM, and this seems to be quite near of the original XCOM games. I haven't tried it out yet, but it's definitely something I want to play.
Yeah, that's high on my list of games that I'm interested in from the bundle.
I guess I've fallen a bit out of the loop with gaming news, but basically I already have all of the ones in the bundle that I've heard of, so I'm going to have to catch up and watch some trailers if I'm going to make a decision on that.
I played the original Cube and really liked it. I hadn't picked up the director's cut, but I think it was given to all people who previously owned the original game, but they had a misconfiguration issue where the Linux depots weren't assigned to that sub. But that's since been resolved, so if anybody's been having trouble installing that, give it another try. I'm looking forward to checking that out.
What I was going to say was, I'm curious if you guys, when you guys get an email from, let's say, Indie Gala, Humble Bundle, Bundle Stars, or whomever it is, when you open it up, you're just looking for Linux support. You're not even looking at titles. Once you see that there's enough Linux support, you start looking at the titles. Anybody else does that?
I used to, but then I ended out with like 700 Steam games. It was a bad habit to me. So
Yeah.
So now I like look for the titles and then I look to see if they work in Linux or work in Wine after that.
It's just something I usually do.
You know, it's tricky. These days I kind of steer clear of bundles and try and buy games full price. So pay what you want stuff is, you know, I kind of look at that, but generally I feel like I prefer to just get games individually directly from developers if I can.
You're a different kind of person.
I am. I'm definitely that kind of person.
I like you.
Thanks, man. I like you too.
We all like cheese nuts.
Yo, when are we gonna play Alien Swarm?
Soon.
You better hit me up.
Alright, moving on. Assault Android Cactus has been released. We mentioned that previously, and we've had the developers join us a couple of times as guests over previous episodes. So congratulations to them on you know, making it out of early access, and after nearly 3 years, you know, having a finished, polished game that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, and cheese.
Have any of you guys played that? I think, Corbin, you've played it?
Yeah, I started to play it, but I need to practice it. I don't come far. I am at the first boss, I think, at the moment, and have difficulties to get past him.
Which ones are you stuck on? All of them, or?
No, I just started the game with the standard character, and
Yep.
there, I don't know, 3 or 4 stages you can pass, and then there's one bigger enemy. I don't know the name at the moment.
Well, the very first boss that you encounter, his name is Embryo, and defeating him is more about knowing when to stay close and when to stay distant.
Yeah.
I guess the developers like to frame the bosses as sort of skill checks to make sure that you have the skills that you need to move on to the next area, and that you've learned the kinds of things that they want to teach you during the levels in that zone.
Yeah, as I said, I need to practice more so I get my skills improved. Yeah, but you wrote an article about the experience of being an early access player.
Yeah, I did. I wasn't expecting to. I was like just thinking about writing something about the release date announcement, and then this whole article fell out. So I guess I was moved, and yeah, I've talked about it before a little bit on the show, but Cactus to me seems like the kind of experiences, felt like the early access provided the kind of experiences that Valve want people to have with Steam Early Access. The game has been like the bits of the game that have been implemented have been very polished, but then there have also been a couple of side bits where you can watch the game evolve and take shape, where there's like untextured levels and you can see them experimenting with design and gameplay, and then as that solidifies, it gets an art pass and all that sort of stuff. And so being able to watch that stuff grow over time has been really rewarding. Yeah, so I'd say for anybody or I guess anybody who's motivated enough to click a link, should probably check out the demo. The demo's a lot of fun. I think it has the first zone and the first boss, so you got the opportunity to play, the release content, and then any progress you make will carry over if you do pick up the full game. And it has local co-op, so if you're looking for a game to play with friends, you got that option as well.
I've had a pretty good experience with early access in general myself. Maybe I've just been lucky, but like most stuff I've played off Kickstarter or Steam Early Access has ended up pretty polished.
Same here, but I think that's maybe that's about being thoughtful about who you support and what you support more than anything else. I think there have been a lot of people who just jump in without putting much thought in, and I think if you do that, it's easy to have experiences that aren't so enjoyable.
All right.
Another Australian developer that's released a game, Disparity Games, I think they call themselves, have released a game called Ninja Pizza Girl, which is sort of, I backed it on Kickstarter, and I enjoy it. I think it's an interesting game, and it does some cool things. It has some things that it does well, has some things that it doesn't do as well. But as far as a game about bullying, about peer pressure, about surviving in an unfriendly environment goes, I think it's quite resonant and enjoyable on that level alone. And yeah, when you're doing things right, the sense of momentum you can get from running is quite enjoyable. If anybody's interested in checking that out, that is out now and available to play and enjoy. And yet another Australian game that has been released. It's been a fantastic month for Australian developers. Is a neat title that I've been playing called Expand, which is this minimalist circular puzzle game that kind of focuses on building atmosphere and emotion through simple shapes and music and sort of pacing. So everything's kind of sort of timed to the music, but it's also very relaxing, I guess. The developer describes it as like this meditative labyrinth exploration game. And yeah, I think it's pretty neat. I wrote an article about it, which I published couple days ago now, I think. And the developer is a Linux user. It turns out that they use Elementary OS. The game was, primarily written on Linux. And they use Vim as their work environment, and they build with Clang. It's always nice to see not just Australian developers, but Australian Linux developers doing interesting things. So if anybody's interested in that, that's worth checking out. Like it's not. You look at it and you kind of go, oh, okay, like it's a puzzle game and it's probably reflex oriented, like Super Hexagon or whatever. But it's much more slow and it feels much more thoughtful, and it never feels like it requires reactive play. Like it sort of shows you everything that's happening, and you got plenty of time to think about what you're doing usually.
So I'm looking at the webpage for Imaginal, which was also recently released apparently, and it just looks adorable and surreal.
I guess it's another game that has this kind of like simple mechanics, and it's more about, I guess, the way that you feel when you zone out and do something, you know. But the developer of that we had as a guest for a previous episode, Lisa Brown, and yeah, it's nice to see that game come out. It's pay what you want over on itch.io, with a minimum of 0 if you don't feel up to paying anything.
Well, that's within my price range. I may have to actually check that one out.
Yeah, it's simple, but it's fun and atmospheric, you know, like, and that sort of thing's cool. I actually showed up on one of Lisa's dev streams a while back, and
Oh, lovely.
you know, just sort of chimed in while she was talking about making the game, and she was talking about how she ties logic to like this sort of proxy object that just exists off screen in the scene, and she called it the manager, put a little face on it, and then before the stream ended, I went off and you know, while everyone was talking, I was painting, and I did a little piece of fan art of the you know, face that she'd drawn, catching a firefly from the game, as a sort of piece of fan art, and it was an amusing anecdote at the time, and I feel it's lost a little bit in the retelling. But yeah.
Looks like we've also got the beginner's guide from the creator of the Stanley Parable.
Yes.
That one, speaking of surreal, basically.
Have you had a chance to check it out yet?
I haven't. Looks like it just got out of early access.
I don't think it had an early access period. I think it was just released yesterday or the day before.
Right, okay.
And this time, this game has directly Linux support. As we know, for the Stanley Parable, the patient waiting Linux users had to wait a while.
Yeah, out of the box Linux support, which is quite nice. I haven't played it, so I can't really talk too much about it, but I think it's not the kind of overt comedy that the Stanley Parable is, so if people are looking for the Stanley Parable, they won't find it here.
I read the recommendation on Steam, which John wrote, and it looks like to be kind of a game where you learn about the process of map making.
Of what?
Creating maps.
Oh, it looks weird from the screenshots in the video.
Yeah, I think it's meant to be that you're looking at a fictional developer's little game experiments and trying to discover about them from the creative expression that is contained within the things that they've made. That's my understanding from the trailer.
And probably it's like with the Stanley Parable, you can't really talk about the game without spoilering too much.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like John saying the same thing in chat.
That's pretty smart.
But yeah, if you want something surreal, I think is probably safe to say, and something that you can explore, then it's probably worth checking out. And John mentions that it's dark, quite dark, and not a comedy. So yeah, I think that's probably the thing that's gonna be hard for a lot of players who are coming across from the Stanley Parable, is that the expectations that it will be funny and make them laugh is probably, you know, good to set that aside to begin with.
So, meanwhile, in the crowdfunding sphere, it looks like there are some interesting games that might be coming out on Linux eventually. The first one we're looking at here is Allison Road by Lilith Limited.
This name rings a bell.
Looks like they haven't got a demo out yet, but it seems like an interesting survival horror type game. I hope they get a demo out at some point.
Wasn't this the game that was inspired by that Silent Hill demo on the PlayStation 4?
Yeah, I guess so.
You know,
It
it kind of looks like that. I mean, the picture that they've got there, the VR thing, looks like that.
Yeah, I think they say it's inspired by Silent Hill on their Kickstarter page too.
I think from the demo they had for the cancelled new Silent Hill game or something similar, they want to make the demo to a full game. And that's what the Kickstarter campaign is for.
Hmm.
The special thing about this here regarding Linux is that the Linux support will come anyway, but if the first or the £300,000 stretch goal is reached, the Linux support will be available on day one.
Hmm.
Well, I hope they make it, but I'm glad that we're like not completely off the radar anyways without it.
You know,
It seems like they're about halfway to their target and nearly halfway through their campaign. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how things shape up.
There's also a Kickstarter going on for BattleTech by the people who've done those really awesome new Shadowrun games.
Right.
I'm a big fan of that genre with the tactical RPG type stuff, and I hope that this runs a bit similar.
Mm.
But I also really miss the old BattleTech games, so this is what I'm going to be looking at a lot. Plus, they've already met their Kickstarter goal, so we have that to look forward to.
Yeah, seems like a lot of people want to have this game, as they really, I don't know how much,
Oh wow.
500% already above funding.
Yeah, wow, that's quite a response.
And they have over 30 days to go.
On the first day, did they has it been a 31-day campaign? Because it still says it's got 31 days to go.
Yeah, I think 33, 36, 34, something like that.
Yeah, wow, this has not been running long at all. That's a surprisingly strong response in such a short period of time. That's really cool.
money laundering.
I guess people want BattleTech.
Yeah.
You know, I want BattleTech.
Well, it just goes to show you can't go past nostalgia.
There's no gameplay video of this, right?
Oh, I hope there is. Let me take a look.
I mean, I just scrubbed through the main video that's on the site, and I really didn't see any, like, I saw like galleries and stuff like that, but I didn't see actual gameplay. I mean, something even small. I'd really like to see what this is about.
Might be a bit early for that from them, but they say it's a tactical combat game, turn-based tactical, so might end up being a bit similar to the Shadowrun games.
Mm. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how many people are jumping on board because they want to play Mech Warrior, and whether or not those people are going to be disappointed.
All right, Sachika in chat mentions it might be like Mech Commander, and I think I remember when I first heard about the new BattleTech, I heard that it was sort of supposed to be a spiritual successor to that.
Yeah, I can see that mentioned here in the description. Their concept art looks neat. I kind of hope that they'll be able to maintain that. It has a very interesting sense of scale that they're putting forward there. I like that. Also happening is a crowdfunding campaign for the third chapter in the episodic game series called The Journey Down.
Whoa, it looks like their headquarters is in my town. Interesting.
Yeah. I probably should have mentioned that sooner. They are really, really, really nice people. I've been involved with testing earlier installments of the game, and have also done a couple of community things as well that they've been involved with, and they're as charming as the game is. It's I'm very, very happy to have put a couple of dollars on the line for this game. I'm looking forward to seeing the story finished up and the world rounded out. The first two chapters are already available for Linux. They're on Steam and Humble, I think. So if anybody is interested, you can pick that up and check it out. It's often described as a bit of a cross between Monkey Island and Grim Fandango. It is at its heart and at its core a classic point-and-click adventure game, and it's got a lot of heart and a lot of comedy in it as well, which is always good. The soundtrack is fantastic as well. Unfortunately, the composer Simon D'Souza died just before the release of the second chapter, but they have other people filling in and helping out. I think Jamie Salisbury, it might be, is taking up that the reins on that front. Very big shoes to fill, but yeah, he's been doing it justice, and it is absolutely fantastic game.
Okie doke. So, anything important that we're missing in Linux news for the past week or few? I can't think of much else.
Yeah, I'm out of stuff. Anybody else got anything?
Steam machines. You guys,
Steam machines. Tell us what's going on.
nah, I got nothing to really say about that. It's all speculative, but I'm really afraid right now, man. As a Linux user, I'm afraid. Because if they fail, bro, that could really hurt.
Oh, what I heard from gamers, they said they don't want to mess around with Linux. They want to have a machine which they can turn on and play, and that's exactly what the Steam machines are made for.
I'm really hoping it catches on. I made a post on Reddit about how I believe Valve is in the position to really create a great loss leader. You know, you can't create Half-Life 3, Left 4 Dead 3, Counter-Strike, etc. You got to go through Valve for this. You know, and I can see one day, if not when it debuts, you know, one day down the road, a year down the road, I can see Valve like pretty much just giving these games away. You know, certainly they'll make money down the road with DLC and all the other stuff, you know, add-ons, etc. I'm just hoping it takes off, you know. You guys aren't worried?
I don't know. I mean, for me, the thing that I care about, and the only thing that I care about, is desktop gaming on Linux.
I agree.
And I don't feel that Steam machines are necessarily going to directly support that.
No.
And that the benefit that it may bring is not going to carry over to any non-Steam platforms. You know, like people are going to be supporting SteamOS rather than Linux if the Steam machines take off, and that's not going to benefit platforms like GOG. It's not going to benefit platforms like Humble or anybody else who's supporting us. So the amount of benefit we get as a platform is kind of limited. And if Linux gaming becomes about Steam machines, I worry that those of us who don't run SteamOS may get a little bit left behind.
Well,
I'm
I'm guessing my point really. It's not really about SteamOS the brand versus GNU Linux the brand. It's not really that. That's not the case. It's just the fact that with Linux being at the core of SteamOS and SteamOS fails, Steam machines fail. I just have this fear that can hurt. You know, like I'm pretty happy with where we are. I've been on Linux for 10 years, and I can tell you, you know, with the last couple of years, games coming out on Linux, it's a pretty big deal. I'm waiting for certain titles that never show up, but I'm excited, and I just hope it doesn't all deflate. You know, when the Steam machines actually land. It was just a thought I had. I thought I'd share it with you guys. I thought, you know, what do you guys think?
Yeah. It's tricky. I also worry that if there are developers out there who go, oh, we're only on Linux because, you know, we want to make sure that we get all that sweet Steam machine money.
Yeah.
That's not the right attitude to have. And if you have that attitude, you're probably going to end up disappointed. I'd rather have people who are here with a sense that supporting Linux is an investment in supporting a growing market, and that it's all about the long-term view rather than the short-term, you know, explosion.
Yeah, but as Ryan said on a previous cast, you don't develop a game for SteamOS directly. Just make a Linux game and it works on each Linux machine where Steam is running.
I like that guy.
I don't get the impression that SteamOS is trying to displace other Linux on the desktop.
No, it's not.
I feel like that's more that in console gaming, maybe 15 years ago, you would just put the disc in and play, and PC gaming was really difficult back then. You'd had to like install updates, put in the CD. Like it took a lot longer to set up. And we're at a really weird position where it's the opposite, because now if you want to play on a console, you need half an hour of software updates before it'll even let you into your game. I feel like like SteamOS is gonna pull from that group more than the desktop gaming group, and I also feel like it'll at least get people publishing more games on Linux, which aren't necessarily even trapped into Steam as an environment.
On the note of compatibilities between SteamOS and other Linux distros, we've already seen at least one or two instances where, where SteamOS has adopted something that's taken time to filter down to other distros, and that there hasn't been that kind of parity, and that it is possible for things to get a little bit out of sync, even if it's temporarily. And I feel like if that, if people start targeting SteamOS and start only testing SteamOS, only testing on SteamOS, then it's going to be possible for desktop users to get left behind a little bit.
But at least we're that much closer.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was entirely Windows, we'd be in trouble. But if it was done on SteamOS, it's only a matter of, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and we have it.
But you got to have people who care to want to do that.
Damn, when you're talking about big money.
Yeah, but the big money.
I feel like they don't really care if people are on SteamOS so long as they're on Steam already. Like, I think Valve are going to try really hard to make sure that the desktop gamers on Steam aren't getting the short end of the stick on that, at least.
Yeah.
I certainly hope so.
It's just I need Valve to back us up here, I mean, it's fantastic. Google backed us up. Ubuntu backed us up. I mean, we just need more backup like that. And Valve, I appreciate them. I don't like the fact that, one pet peeve I have with Valve is one VAC ban could just immediately destroy your account. And, I've had my account for 11 years. And I don't cheat. I don't cheat at all. But, like one mistake, my son jumps on, he turns into an idiot or something like that. And it's like, wow, you could really destroy yourself, So I appreciate it, and it scares me. But, I would love them at the back.
Yeah, I hope that Steam machines end up being a positive experience, and that they perform well enough to meet consumer needs and make developers feel interested and excited by supporting Linux. Like, I hope that stuff happens. But I think it's healthy to make sure that your expectations aren't too high.
Oh man, they haven't been high in a while.
We're going to have at least a couple more decades of, okay, this is it, guys, the year of the Linux desktop.
I think when people started...
Yeah, I don't think next year is going to... I think slow improvement is what we're going to have, and that slow improvement is what we need. And anyway, like fast improvement's just going to be difficult to manage and sustain. So, it's healthier to have slow.
Yeah, I'm just happy that we're getting closer to feature parity for graphics cards and stuff. That's enough for me.
I personally,
yeah,
I am afraid of a mass exodus of any kind that leads its users to Linux. I mean, Linux is very different, I mean, I love it here, and I think anybody, if you give it enough time, you'll get it. But like I see all the time how people just want to switch like cold turkey. And man, I always advise against that, man. Just don't do that. Not like that, It's different here. I mean, there's things you gotta get used to,
Yeah, it really is it really is a tough call, Like, you gotta want to make the move, and you gotta be willing to make whatever sacrifices that entails, Like, otherwise you're not gonna have a positive experience. And it's kind of better for people to come over slowly. Like, if you got one person and they've got 5 friends who can help them along the way, that's great. If you got 12 people and those 5 friends have to try and help 12 people, then it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
So slow, steady growth is always good.
All that said, I really like Linux.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
Really quickly, do you think that when SteamOS does land, right? How soon thereafter will you see articles about how to root SteamOS? I mean, I see a lot of people misuse, they just misunderstand root, and that should sort of ship out of the box, whether it's with su or sudo. But man, I can see that being abused. I can see people just oh, let's just jump on SteamOS and go root.
I don't even understand that expression in this context.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that I've been on Linux long enough to know that root is something you don't play around with. You know, root is something you just it's sort of that last resort. Man, I gotta do root. There's no other way. But I can see people that don't know anything about how Linux operates. You know, let's say they get a Steam machine, and immediately they'll root it. You know, I can see something like that happening, and I can see something like that causing so many problems and headaches because they didn't come in sort of warmed up to, you know, this is why you should respect root.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, people coming from other operating systems, or I guess people coming from Linux, because it's not as big a deal on macOS. Just assume that, you know, everybody has an admin account and everybody can do everything because that's just how it is.
Oh man, when I learned about that, bro, I remember being mad about it. I remember being very upset, man. I was like, "Why are you asking me for my password? This is crazy. I know what I'm doing." Today, I thank goodness, man. You know, I never went root.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of it's a perceptual things, learning hurdles, a learning curve, words that people have to kind of come to terms with. But I think for SteamOS that it's not really going to be an issue. Like, the whole point is that vendors make sure that everything works out of the box and that you don't need root access.
No. I understand.
I also
Although
feel
knowing-
like we don't even.
Knowing the way that Valve work, like, I totally would be expecting the default user account to have root access. Like, I mean, they give +X to every single file that you download. I mean, they don't seem to care much about security.
Yeah, that can hurt, man. I can see that hurting.
Hmm.
I mean, you know what? Because if SteamOS ever becomes vulnerable, makes the news when they, you know, SteamOS hacked, all of a sudden, you know, it's there's gonna be some FUD. You know, FUD has to follow that.
Hmm.
These, you know what? These are just my random thoughts. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it very much.
It's actually nice to wrap with kind of a chat, I guess.
Yeah.
So on that note, thank you, Corbin, Dora, and LinuxN for joining us, and thank you again to our special guest, Aaron. This has been SteamLUG Cast. You can send us feedback via email to cast@steamlug.org. You can find us on IRC on freenode.net at #SteamLUG. You can find us on Twitter @SteamLUG. You can find us on Google Plus as +SteamLUG, if that's exciting. You can find us on YouTube as SteamLUG as well. SteamLUG, all the things.
Yay!
Yay!
All right. It's been fun.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
And special guest from Flippfly Studios. Is it Studios? I probably should have asked that first. Yeah, it's off to a great start there.
Just
You got
Flippfly
this.
is fine. Otherwise, Flippfly Studios. It's Aaron.
Cross. I have to have a shot.
How you find? Excuse me. I'm gonna need the rest of you guys to ask questions because I'm sick.
Yeah. Okay. The
It
other
leans
feature of
towards-
it that
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dora.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
Personally, multi.
Uh-oh.
We had a slight technical issue there. I think LinuxN has just rejoined us.
Yeah, where did I get cut off?
Right at the beginning.
You said I have a question, and then you didn't say anything.
Get out of town.
No, I think what I heard last was that you were talking about the feature that would make SQL more appealing for you, and you said for you personally, and then you said something starting with M, and I bet I know what it is.
Yeah, okay. Here, let's do this again. I said, wow, when I disconnected and came back, my recording stopped.
That's all good.
Save me, Cheese.
Someone else can introduce the topics.
Cheese, you're the man. Please do them.
Introduce the whats. Which ones? I can't read
It's all
anymore.
good. Just let me finish coughing. Sorry, I'm waffling.
So good.
It's okay, you can do that.
Jeez, you stole my
No.
intro.
I'm dying, my poor voice. What? I thought you said you didn't
I
want
would
to do it.
and then you started as I wanted to do
Oh.
it. It's so good.
I did
Oh,
hear
sorry,
Carlton
man.
say he wanted to do it.
I have it on record.
Oh, I must have totally misheard. I must have
You said
completely
I'm the man.
misheard. Because I was like, you said before that you would do it, and I was like, all right, that's fine. And then as the show started, I was like, oh, well, I want to make sure that Corbin doesn't feel uncomfortable. I'll just I'll ask him again. I'll check and make sure. And I thought you said that you wanted me to do it, and I was like, all right,
No,
fine.
I
I'll do
said
it.
I would do it.
You even told Corbin you're the man.
Yeah, as you did.
I did?
Yeah, you did.
Man, I'm sick. I don't know what I'm saying.
Oh, man.
You can hear it in the outtakes later.